Okay, so welcome back, Bio 12. We're going to be starting the reproductive unit. And in this unit, we're going to talk about the male and the female reproductive system, but for the purposes of today, we are going to talk about just the male reproductive unit. Okay, so the outline for the male reproductive system. So we're talking about the pathway that sperm takes. We're talking about the function of the seminal fluid and why it's important. And we're talking about hormone regulation at the end. So let's start with the pathway. So there's three parts to the sperm before we get started. So they have the head. Here's the head section here. It's the first section. It contains the nucleus, which has the 23 chromosomes, which is produced by meiosis. And it also has acrosomes. So an acrosome is an enzyme that is going to allow the sperm to break through the egg when it is in the female reproductive system. Second part, the midpiece or the center. This is where the mitochondria are contained, and again we know mitochondria for ATP, so for the energy that the sperm needs to get where it's going. Third part, so that's the tail here. This is for movement, and it's going to propel the sperm in the direction that it wants to go. So let's start with the path. So our journey begins in the testes, in our seminiferous tubules. This is where sperm is being produced. Okay, so here is the white. This is our seminiferous tubules. Sperm is first produced here. Now we're going to move into the epididymis. So our sperm is made in our seminiferous tubules. It moves to our epididymis, which is this section here. And in this section, in the epididymis, our sperm is going to mature. Now our sperm has matured, so it can move on to the vas deferens. So the vas deferens is just a tubule that is going to direct the sperm where it needs to go, and it's leading it away from the testes. So from our epididymis, we go down, and then we're going to go through the tubule, which is the vas deferens, to go in the direction that the sperm needs to flow away from the testes. So through the vas deferens, it's going to pass 3 glands, and these accessory glands are producing seminal fluid that the sperm is picking up as it moves past. So it's going to move past the seminal vesicle, the prostate gland, and the Cowper's gland. And these are producing different types of seminal fluid that the sperm picks up as it passes. So here we are, we've gone through the vas deferens, we come out, and we're going to move past the seminal vesicle, we're going to move past the prostate gland, and we're going to move past the Cowper's gland, and pick up the secretion as we go. So now that it has the secretions from the glands, our sperm is going to move through the urethra and out the opening of the penis. And that is the last part of the pathway. So moving on to part 2, the function of the seminal fluid. So again, we talked about the 3 glands that is producing the seminal fluid, and each are producing different types of seminal fluid. So we have 2 seminal fluids being produced in the seminal vesicles. This is going to be fructose. Fructose is going to be used for energy and is producing prostaglandins, which is something that we're going to discuss a little bit more next. Okay, it's going to move past the prostate gland. This has 1 seminal fluid, and the prostate gland is producing citrate from the citric acid cycle, and again this is going to be used for energy. And then there's 2 seminal fluids in the Cowper's gland, and we're going to talk about the bicarbonate. And from our digestive unit, we know bicarbonate is going to be like a buffer that's going to be used for the pH. So let's talk about why these glands are producing the seminal fluid. So what is seminal fluid important for? So this creates a basic environment for the sperm to function. So that's what the bicarbonate is doing. It's creating that basic environment. so that when the sperm are in the female reproductive system, which is an acidic environment, the sodium bicarbonate is going to be more like a buffer to increase the pH so that the sperm are able to function properly in the female reproductive system. So the prostaglandins, these are lipid-based. These are going to be for uterine contraction. And the whole purpose of uterine contraction is to help propel the sperm towards the egg when it is in the female reproductive system. A third function, the fructose, this is using glycolysis, and again we know that glucose is broken down so that ATP can be produced. And finally, we have our citrate from our citric acid cycle. And this, again, a citric acid cycle is fairly complicated. It breaks down fats and carbs and proteins. The main purpose for you is to know that citrate is, again, for ATP production. Last part, hormone regulation. So there's a lot of text here. We're going to go through this together. So the hypothalamus is located in your brain. So we start with the hypothalamus. Here's our brain. Okay? It is going to secrete the gonadotropin releasing hormone, or GnRH. So it releases GnRH. If you haven't heard these terms tomorrow, then maybe we'll discuss them a bit more in class. Okay, so GnRH is released. This is going to stimulate the anterior pituitary, all again in your brain. So this is going to go to your anterior pituitary. And your anterior pituitary has been stimulated to release two hormones, follicle-stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone. So now it has secreted FSH, follicle-stimulating hormone, and LH, luteinizing hormone. Follicle-stimulating hormone is just like it sounds, it's stimulating the follicle, and in this case, in the male reproductive system, it's stimulating the seminiferous tubules to produce sperm. So we know that this is where it begins. The luteinizing hormone is going to stimulate the production of testosterone in the interstitial cells. So this is for testosterone. Now, testosterone is going to go on to be part of the negative feedback loop. So once it's created, it's going to travel. It's going to send a signal back to the hypothalamus to tell this whole process to be shut down. So that means it's a negative feedback loop. So once testosterone is made, this whole process is shut down. So let's look at a cross-section. So this is the rabbit testicles. These circles here, these are your seminiferous tubules, and we know this produces sperm. The triangles that you can see in here, here's a triangle in here. These are the interstitial cells that we know are producing testosterone. Again, all in the testes. Okay, so let's look at the structure of testosterone. So we know testosterone is a steroid or a hormone. This is its structure right here. We know that steroids are lipids. We know that lipids are produced in our cells by our smooth endoplasmic reticulum. Good. Hopefully you guys got that. Okay, so our smooth endoplasmic reticulum is producing the steroid in our testes. Okay? So our testosterone is used for mainly secondary sex characteristics. So this is why males have deeper voices, they have body and facial hair, they have muscle development, and they have oils for acne, and sweat makes a stench. Okay? So those are, testosterone is mostly for those secondary sex characteristics in males. Looking at this negative feedback that we were talking about, so here's your hypothalamus. It releases the GnRH, which goes to stimulate your anterior pituitary. Your anterior pituitary is releasing luteinizing hormone, and follicle stimulating hormone. Follicle stimulating, we know, goes to the seminiferous tubules to produce sperm. And the luteinizing hormone is going to go to our interstitial cells, which produces testosterone. Testosterone is then going to either create our secondary sex characteristics, or it's going to go back to the hypothalamus to tell the hypothalamus to stop releasing the gonadotropin-releasing hormone, so this process is shut down. So our hypothalamus is the beginning of how our sperm and our testosterone is produced in our seminiferous tubules and in our interstitial cells. So what you should get out of this, you should be knowing the structure and pathway of the sperm, not too difficult. Know what the seminal fluid is made out of and why it's important, mostly for being in the female environment. And then again, the hormones that are released in order for sperm and testosterone to be produced, and that negative feedback loop. Awesome.